we'll go from there. Great, over to you, Ben.
Great, thanks, Steph. Yeah, so I think a few of you know me already, but for those of you who don't, my name is Ben Stacey. So I run an audiovisual company, Plugged In Audiovisual, and I am also part of a church, a ground level church, but we're also part of the Baptist Union. I'm on the leadership team on that church as well. So we're going to be looking, as Steph has said, about what we need to kind of think about when we come to putting online church as we start to looking going back into our buildings, and all that that's going to involve. Primarily, I'm going to be looking at the technical side of that and sort of what technology is involved. As I say, that's the area that I work in is in audiovisual equipment, so that's speakers, lights, cameras, all that kind of stuff. But we can open questions out at the end beyond that as well. So if you've got other things that you want to throw in, then please do. So first of all, just the first question that I want to sort of address is digital here to stay? And I think probably the answer is yes. Most churches, I think, are going to be very much looking now to bring digital elements into their church life, and going forward from here, I'm guessing that's probably why most of you are all here, because you're expecting that there's going to be some use of digital technology, online technology, going forward. So as we look to getting back into our buildings, that is going to be the case for the majority of churches, I think. There's a few kind of key reasons why I think it's kind of important that churches look at that and embrace that. And three that I'd identify quickly here. First of all, what I call the fear factor, which is the people who are going to be kind of fearful of going back into a group of people again. As I know from talking with our congregation, there are people who just don't feel comfortable going back into a group of people, certainly not yet, and who knows how long that's going to go on for. And I think the kind of existing elements of our congregations are going to want to be able to participate in church but not physically attend a building and physically go into groups of people. So there's going to be people fearful of gathering together, so online church will support them. I think the length of time that this has already gone on for, and the length of time that it's likely to continue going on for until we're able to kind of physically gather back in something like what we've been used to in the past, is going to mean that new habits are going to be developed, and over that period of time people are going to kind of get into a new way of doing church, and those new habits are going to be then difficult for people to break. So I think there'll be some people who just get into the habit of doing church from their front room, and I think there's the ability to have a greater reach when we go online. And again, many of you may have experienced this already, but the statistics, some of you may be familiar with the research that Tear Fund did that says before lockdown, approximately about 5% of the adult UK population were engaging in some kind of church service. During lockdown, that increased to about 24%. So a really big increase in people engaging in church use. And so there's actually a really good document that I'd suggest you go and have a look at. I might be able to send some links to Steph. She might be able to share them out possibly. But there's a good document called Everybody Welcome Online, which was put together with Durham University. I think it was done sort of through the Church of England primarily. But they had some really good statistics on there that were really helpful to sort of break those numbers down a little bit. So churches who have only done a kind of Zoom chat like this, and engaging with their existing congregation, actually in the main, they've seen a decrease in attendance. So anybody who's just engaged on Zoom, average congregation was down by about 17%. But anybody who's putting a service out more publicly onto, say, YouTube or Facebook, something like that, they have seen significant increases. So churches who have gone out onto a single platform, on average, have been up by about 51%. And churches going out onto multiple platforms have seen increases of around 86%. So big increases for churches who are going out onto kind of public platforms. So fantastic way to reach new people and to engage with new people. So if digital is here to stay, then the next question I would always encourage people to ask is, Why do you want to do online church? Always start by asking why. Why do you want to do this? Because if you can start there, start by understanding the why, the reason for it, we can start to build goals, we can start to build things that we want to achieve, and through that we can then work out the how and the things that we need to put in place to make that happen. So if I give you a couple of examples, why do we want to do online church? Well, we want to do it because, as we've just said, there's the fear factor, the people in our congregations who don't want to come back into a building, they don't want to gather together. We want to continue feeding our congregations. We want to be able to keep reaching those people that we know and that have been part of the church for however long. We want to keep that going, keep that teaching going. So therefore, we want to do online church to engage with those people. That could be one reason. A second reason might be to say, well, actually, we want to look at engaging with new people. We want to expand. We want to see this as an outreach opportunity, and we want to reach more people. Now, as I've already shown with those statistics, if those are two possible reasons why we want to do it, actually the how we do those two things could look very different. So if we are just looking at just our own congregation, people fearful of coming back together, so we're going to do online church to reach our existing congregation, where we've got their email addresses, we've got their names, we can set up a Zoom call, we can send out the login details, they can all access it. Fine, that will work. So that's the how for that reason. But if we're going to look at expanding and reaching out and seeing new people, well, we don't know their names, we don't know their numbers, we haven't got their email addresses, we can't just send them a Zoom link. So if we're going to reach out into our congregations, then we need to look at a more public, open platform. And so the how for that reason is going to look very different, and we're going to look at YouTube or Facebook or some other platform that's just more public and more open. So if we can start by understanding why we want to do it, why do we want to achieve online church, we can set our goals and we can work out how we make that happen. So we're going to look at some of the technology. As I say, that's the kind of key area for me, is the technology and kind of the nuts and bolts of this, if you like, how we sort of put this together. And really in broad terms, there are three areas that we can look at when we come to technology for online church use, and that's going to be sound, video and lighting. And so just very briefly, I'm going to just outline a few things just to consider as we start to look at going back into buildings, what those three things are going to look like and how we can maximize those to make our online churches work. So from a sound point of view, first of all, probably most churches these days tend to have some kind of a PA system. You would have had something that when your congregations were in your building, you were using probably. Anybody, just put your hand up, anybody not have a PA system, not have anything in their building? No, great. So you all had something in your building. So probably whatever that was is going to get you at least 90% of the way to being able to put sound into an online church service, if not even 100% of the way there. For most people, you've got some kind of a microphone, some kind of a mixing desk. Those kind of things, they're kind of key basic elements that you will need to do an online church service, and those things you're probably already going to have in place. Some kind of like a clip-on lapel mic or a headset mic, they are ideal. They're nice and simple, easy to use, and as I say, you've probably already got them to hand. Anybody who's got a digital mixing desk is going to be in a better position at this point, because digital mixing desks, obviously the essence of being online is it's something that is digital. You know, the very nature of the internet is it's digital technology. And so if you've got a mixing desk that's already doing that digital conversion for you to create some digital audio, it's very easy to be able to connect that to the internet and put sound onto the internet. That's easy peasy. If you're using an analog mixing desk, you may need an additional converter to convert that audio for you, to get it into a computer, to get it onto the internet. So that might be the one step that's missing for some people. But that will depend on what you've already got. But probably, as I say, 90% of the way there, if not 100% of the way there, and you can just use what you've got and get yourself up and running on that point of view. One thing to be aware of though, when you're going back into buildings, if you don't have a congregation in that building, your building may sound very echoey. People are very good at absorbing sound, and when you've got a big congregation in a room, they will soak up some of that sound and break up some of those echoes. If you're going into an empty space, into an empty building, you might just want to think about ways in which you can break those echoes up and stop it sounding quite so echoey. So things like old duvets, old blankets, old pillows and cushions, anything like that that you can stick in the room, drape them over balconies or whatever you might have that you can just use to help absorb some of those sounds, some of those reflections, will be great if you're going into an empty building. If you can get some people in there, then fine. But if you're going into a very empty space, just have a think about that, because that might be a problem for you. So that's the kind of basic essence of sound. If you want to go into more detail on some of this stuff, then it might be more of a one-to-one conversation, and we can do that if we've got time and space in the questions later on. Otherwise, again, I can give you my contact details. I'm more than happy to have these conversations with people one-to-one if you want to talk through specifics on your system. Okay, so sound. The second one then, lighting. For video use, you do need more lighting than you would have typically for just sort of general use. So cameras obviously are a device that is, it works by picking up light. Light bounces off surfaces back into the camera picks that light up and turns it into some kind of an image that we can then use. However, Sony and Canon and all these people who make all these amazing cameras can't do as good a job as God can, and God created our eyes far more sensitive to light than any camera that exists on the planet. So those cameras will all need more lighting than you probably would have already been using. So try and boost your light levels as much as possible. The great news is that one of the best sources of light for video is daylight. So in many cases, all you need to do is open the blinds, open the windows, open doors, just let some daylight into the building. And that's a really great source for video most of the time. So anything you can do to let daylight into the building is great. If that's not possible for you, you might want to look at adding extra lighting in. But again, modern LED lighting these days is fairly cheap and fairly effective, so you don't need to spend loads on lighting. You can do that fairly quickly and easily. But as I say, daylight is great, so if you can make use of daylight, even just rearranging your space a little bit to allow kind of daylight to come in and light people is a great way to do that. And then finally, the video element. So you will need some kind of a camera to be able to get your images online, and they can be a number of different things. So it could be a mobile phone. Mobile phones can work really well in some cases. Something like a webcam, again, can work really well. However, you might well want to look at investing into a proper camera and getting a proper video camera. But first of all, before we go any further on that, let's just sort of look at the pros and cons of those various different types of cameras and where they work best and perhaps where they don't work so well. So mobile phones, I think they're absolutely brilliant. They're very, very good cameras, particularly for recording video. If you're going to do a pre-recorded video, absolutely no problem with most people just capturing it on your phone, recording it on your phone, and you can use that for editing. They're very, very good for that. So yeah, anything where you're doing any kind of pre-record, if you've got nothing else, a mobile phone is going to do a really good job for you. You might want to still use your audio from your PA system or something to capture your audio, because the audio can sometimes be not quite so good on the phone, so you might want to do something to improve the audio. But from the video point of view, mobile phones are generally pretty good at capturing video. Where they fall down a little bit is if you're looking to live stream a service from your building. So if we're going back to the building again and we're going to look at live streaming something, the downside of a mobile phone is it's a very wide angled lens. And so that means in order to get a good picture of somebody, you probably need to be fairly close to that camera. And when I say a good picture, this it's good to kind of understand a little bit about camera angles and what different camera angles are going to look like. So first of all, it's great to have your camera about in line with your eyes. So if you can have an eye level camera, not looking up or looking down, just looking kind of straight onto somebody, that's a good angle to have your cameras at, as close as possible. Get them at eye line. If you look up to somebody, if your camera's low down and you're looking up to somebody, it makes them seem kind of very big and very powerful, very dominating in that image. And likewise, if your camera's up high looking down onto somebody, it has the opposite effect. It will make them very small and very minimal, and not very impacting in that image. So you want to try and keep it at eye line. That's a nice comfortable level, nice place to look at somebody, and you can kind of just have a nice natural conversation with them at that point. The other thing is how wide, how close do you want to be to the camera? How much do you want to see around them? And on this point, what you want to try and think is, if you were having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, if you were stood next to them having a conversation, how much of their body would you see? I don't know whether my microphone's just up here, so if my sound disappears when I do this, I apologise. But if I move into the camera, this can become very intimidating. This is somebody's getting into your personal space, and this can be very kind of, it can feel a bit uncomfortable. It can feel a bit like this person's just getting a bit too close. Just you want them to back off a little bit. So too close to the camera is not great. And likewise, if I move away from the camera, it can feel like I'm having to shout across the room at you. And this isn't a nice way to have a conversation. This person isn't really engaging with me. This is too far apart. So if you can position yourself somewhere, so about waist to chest, somewhere between this sort of area, from your head to around your waist to chest height, somewhere like this. This is a nice comfortable distance. This would be a kind of comfortable space. If we were standing having a conversation with each other, this is about how much you would expect to see of somebody. The other thing that's also quite useful about this is you can have a bit of context, and you can see a little bit more about what's going on around me, and you can see that you can see where I am. So if we're going back into our buildings again, they'll be able to see that they're in the church building. You'll get an idea of the space that they are in. And also think about, so you can't quite see this in here, but I'm using some notes on here. Sometimes it can be quite nice to have, say, a table with your notes on. And so people can see, if I look away from the camera, you can see why I'm looking away from the camera. If my notes are down here and you can't see them, and every now and again I'm doing this, you'll be thinking, well, is that guy's shoes more important than I am? Why is he looking down at the floor all the time? So if you can see some context, you can see why I'm looking away, it actually helps to people to kind of understand, oh, okay, he's just looking at his notes and then he's looking back up again. I can understand that because there's some context there. So when we come to our mobile phones, if we're going to look at live streaming from a mobile phone, as I say, it's a very wide-angled camera, which means we need to be fairly close to it to be able to get all those things in place. Now, if you're in an empty space, that's perhaps not too bad. You can prop your mobile phone up on a stack of books or whatever it might be. But if we're in a building with our congregations in there, actually it could be quite strange to have a mobile phone just on the edge of the platform right in front of anybody who's speaking with a congregation all stood around behind you. That's probably not going to work too well. So if you're getting to a point where you're bringing congregation back into the building, you need to be able to get all those things that we just talked about with regards to angles, without having cameras right on the platform or cameras kind of in the way of where the congregation might be. And so that's the point where you might want to look at a camera with a zoom, something that you can put further back down the building and zoom in a bit. And so you might then want to look at buying a new camera, or if you've got cameras already, then great. But if you haven't, then you might want to look at investing in a camera for that point. But for empty buildings, for recording services, anything like that, mobile phones can work really well. Webcams is the other type of camera that you can use. Now, a webcam, in and of itself, it can't record. You can record off a webcam, but you'll need something else, a laptop and some software or something to do the recording for you. Without wanting to go into too much of the technical details of it, the way that webcams work is it's very much designed for internet use. So connecting it into a laptop and live streaming is absolutely fine with a webcam. You do again have the issue of the wide angled lens, so you'll need to just position yourself with regards to the wide angled lens. But for anything recorded, it's not the best way to do recordings. So if you want to look at pre-recording stuff and editing videos and uploading videos, I would look to a mobile phone before I look to a webcam for that kind of thing. Webcams are great if you're just going to do a live stream and just plug it straight into your computer and off you go. They can do that job, but as I say, you will just need to be a bit closer to it. So just make sure you've got that space around you and things. And again, just think if you've got to balance this on the edge of a platform to make this work, it's perhaps not ideal. So they kind of fall somewhere in between the two, really, I would say. Again, they've got some good pros, but they've also got some significant cons as well. So just think about what it is you're trying to do. Do you have a congregation in the building? You know, all those other factors, and then you can decide on what cameras are going to work best for you. But it might be possible that you can get away with what you have already, but you might also want to look at investing into that down the line as well. There is, so as I've said, it's very difficult to make any specific recommendations. It very much depends on the building. It very much depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. But if I can just very quickly draw your attention to one thing, there's these little devices here, and some of you may be familiar with these. These have become really, really popular recently. So this is called, it's made by a company called Blackmagic Design, and this is called the Atom Mini, and there's a version called the Atom Mini Pro. And these are absolutely fantastic devices that all churches need to be aware of, because they really are just a one-box solution for most of what most churches are looking to do at the minute. So what this is, I don't know how much you can see of this, but here you've got 4 inputs. And what this allows you to do is it can bring in cameras or laptops, anything that's on HDMI. It's HDMI connectors. So anything that gives you an HDMI connector, you can have up to 4 of them coming in here. And by selecting any of these buttons, what we have on the back is a USB output. So this will convert a camera or a laptop into a USB feed, which can then go out onto a live stream. So you can plug one of these into your computer, and as I say, you could have a couple of cameras, and you could have, like, if you've got sermon slides or song lyrics or anything like that coming off a laptop, all of that can be plugged into here. Select your input, and that will stream that information out onto your live stream for you. You can even do more kind of complicated things, so you can overlay song lyrics on top of cameras. All of that kind of stuff can be done. And you can do picture-in-picture, so you can do a big picture of the sermon slides with a little image of the preacher's camera in the corner, so you can still see the preacher and the sermon slides at the same time, all those kind of things. Very kind of clever little box. The Pro version just adds some few extra buttons in here with a few extra features. So this version, you take the USB out into a computer up to your live stream. The Pro version actually has the ability, it has a live stream on and off button, and via your internet connection on the back here, you can actually set this to just stream straight off the box with no extra computer needed. So you can just plug this in, hit go live, and it will just set the stream going for you, and then you just choose which input you want to go. So that really, really simple little boxes that, as I say, it pretty much does 90%, 100% of what churches are looking to do right now. So really worthwhile having a look at that if that's something that you are looking to be doing in the coming months and years. So that is the kind of basics of live streaming. That was pretty much all I wanted to say on this for now. So let's open this up to questions. I'm guessing there's going to be questions that you guys have got. So as I say, if you want to talk specifics about your system, we might be able to do some of that. But fire away. Let's have some questions.
Can you tell us how much that box costs, please?
Yeah, so the basic one is, so ballpark, they're about £300-ish, and then for the Pro version is like 600-ish, something of that kind of order.
Okay.
We've invested in a Mevo camera, which I'm streaming from at the moment.
Yep.
Would that interface with that easily, or would it be a bit more complicated?
Yeah, I think the Mevo, is wireless connections only. I don't think it's got any physical connections on it. So yeah, that wouldn't interface with that.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a
with the
slightly
Boost, it's
different
got a USB connection that you can put input into, but I
Yeah,
guess it's the output that's the problem.
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Let's is anybody kind of already doing some kind of online service? Who's doing some kind of online church service already?
Yeah.
Show of hands. Yeah, yeah. Everybody doing something? Yeah. Okay. What are people doing? I know Rona and Bob, you guys are doing YouTube services. Is that right? Yeah. What's everybody else doing?
Yeah, we're like pre-recording and YouTubing.
Yep.
Yeah, so are we.
Yeah.
We're just doing a Zoom amongst the
Zoom.
congregation.
Yeah.
So we're not
Okay.
really online in that sense.
Well, it's still an online form of service. Yeah. Yeah. Go on, Rona. Yeah.
It's really good what you've shared so far. So thank you. And I think you're absorbing it and trying to think ahead, because it's as though, we're going to phase how we move back into buildings and how we retain some level of online. But that last little gadget you mentioned, I was thinking that would be very useful for some of our midweek in-house church meetings, especially in the winter months. We're a rural area, and all the connections with that would be very good. My sense is we're open to change all along the way, but I think our Sunday services, even when some of us are back in the building, I think we would still record and edit, I think, for that. But we've not made decisions, but it's just interesting to hear what other people are doing and thinking. And it's good that you're sharing some of the gadgetry with us, and there's decisions to make about cameras. Would you recommend more than one camera so that the pre-recorded experience can be a little bit better, really?
Yeah. So two things that I'll touch on actually that you've just raised there. So yeah, in your kind of last question there, yes, I would suggest 2 cameras is a really good. It is much more watchable to have 2 camera angles. If you can have an image that's kind of moving a little bit and just has a little bit of variety in it, it just makes it much easier for people to watch that. So normally that would be a wide-angled shot and then a closer shot. So you'd have 2 cameras set up, one which would cover, and depending on your situation, you can go much, much wider. So you could have some people will set up a wide shot that will be the whole platform, which if you've got very kind of mobile preachers who like to walk around and move backwards and forwards and all over the place, that can be fine and that can work really well. What you don't really want to have is a really wide shot with just a very static person that's very small in the middle of that shot. But if there's lots of movement happening, then a wider shot can be great. Just kind of judge that depending on your situation. And then, yeah, a much closer shot, so maybe more like head and shoulders shot that you can then just switch in between those 2 things. Makes that a lot more watchable. So if you can, if budget allows, then 100% yes, recommend that you do that. Wherever possible. Just coming back onto though, you raised the point about whether you maintain a pre-recorded service or go to live streaming. Maybe I'll just sort of talk about the differences between those 2 things. Absolutely, there is no reason why you couldn't do that. You can 100%. You can just keep going with the pre-recorded service and use that for your online and do something different in the building. That would work absolutely fine. There's kind of a few general differences between pre-recorded and live stream services. So quality wise, you will always be able to get a better result from a pre-recorded service than you will from a live stream. Live stream, inevitably there'll be mistakes and there'll be things that go wrong and there'll be ums and ahs and pauses and all those kind of things in a live stream service, particularly at the beginning, because there's majority of people, preachers and worship leaders and all those things, they're not used to preaching to a camera. They're not used to kind of preaching this way. This is a very different skill for people to learn. There's kind of a big learning curve, not just from a technical point of view, but from how do you present yourself to a camera and how do you kind of make yourself come across on camera. That's an entirely new preaching skill that preachers are going to have to learn. And so there's going to be a lot more pausing, there's going to be a lot more mistakes, there's going to be a lot more uncertainty, and there's a lot of things that people are going to have to learn to begin with. Once they get into that, they'll probably get better at it. And you may well have even found this. I mean, I know certainly from our regular preachers in our services, I do all our video editing for our services, and I've very much noticed from the very first videos that we did, it was taking me hours and hours and hours and hours to edit those up because there were just so many mistakes and going back and doing them again. But the more they've done it, the better it's got. And the more recent ones now are much, much easier, and we don't have anywhere near those number of mistakes. And it's just a skill that will need to be learned as time goes on. So you'll find that pre-recorded, better quality than live stream generally. The other sort of draw, I would say, towards live stream is about the amount of work that it will take. Because if you're going to be doing a live streamed service, or sorry, if you're going to do a live service, a physical service, as well as a pre-recorded service, you're effectively doubling the amount of work that you have to do. You have to produce 2 services every single week, which is fine. And you can do that, as I say, absolutely no problems with that. But you just need to be aware that that is going to be the case. You're going to have kind of almost twice the content, twice the amount of work, twice the amount of stuff going on. Go on, Rona, yeah.
Yeah, or you can record your live stream and edit that.
Yes, you could.
Which isn't quite as much work.
Yeah.
But it's something to think through and consider, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, there are a number of different ways. Yeah. Go on, Richard. Yeah.
We are, I said we're pre-recording, but that's for Sundays. I'm also live streaming to India twice a week as well, so it is a big overhead doing all of it, I have to say. A lot of my time just stood in front of a camera at the moment. But what I was going to ask about is recommendings on software to mix the whole thing. What kind of, which is your preferred package?
Okay, so from software point of view, I like OBS. OBS is quite a good, powerful, kind of flexible piece of software. But to be honest, I mean, again, just kind of taking budgets and things into account, if you can go hardware, my big recommendation would be to do it in hardware and to do it with one of these type of devices. This kind of eliminates the need of doing any mixing in software. The trouble with software is that it requires a fairly powerful computer to be able to do a live stream alone is a fairly PC intensive process to kind of go through. So doing something with a live stream is fairly hard work. And if you're then adding on to that the software mixing, video mixing as well, that's kind of 2 things that your computer's having to do, both of which are fairly processor intensive. You are just putting a lot of strain on your computer. And if your computer crashes or your internet goes down or whatever happens, you kind of all eggs in one basket and everything can fall over all at once. If you can spread that load out and do the video mixing in a piece of hardware, and then just do the live streaming on the computer, you're kind of you're lessening the load across everything, and therefore the likelihood of things going wrong reduces, and hopefully will make things a bit smoother for you.
Sure.
But yeah, it can be done either way. Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
I mean, one thing I'd say is, so with a live, they do, it's not so loud. They do obviously pre-recorded service for a Sunday morning, but in a Sunday evening, it's live worship with a location pastor. And from my point of view, I find worshipping on a Sunday evening much more engaging because I'm worshipping because it's right there, rather than pre-recorded. So I know some people with pre-recorded, it's a bit harder because you're watching a screen, whereas in an evening we are still watching a screen, but they're playing at the same time, you're interacting. So that's one thing I kind of like about live stream, is that it is more interactive, and people feel like they can be more part of it because it is live. But
yeah, absolutely. There again, there's pros and cons to it all, and there's you need to weigh all those things up and just weigh up the balance of what you're wanting to achieve. And again, it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning about the why. Why do you want to do this? Because if you can understand that, then you can work out whether you want to have something that is perhaps a bit more polished and a bit more kind of higher quality, or do you want to have something that is live and raw and interactive? And again, they're just going to do different things for different people. And if you can understand why you're doing it, then again, you can work out which is going to be the best way to do that. Yeah, great.
Would you say that I've got a small Facebook group for my mental health support group, and I do a lot of Facebooking, messaging and things, and I know that evenings and winter months, people with any issues around their mental health definitely don't want to come out in an evening. So I'm going to talk to my pastor and we've talked about it, to bring it through to a daytime for coffee and chat and things. So would you say that Facebook groups, it's something about, I can't remember what it's called, for that kind of group, private group, is a okay platform?
Yeah, for that kind of thing. Yeah, again, really good question. It's worth maybe just having a minute on this. Actually, we'll just talk a bit about platforms. So yeah, for that kind of thing, that works really, really well. Obviously, the downside of a Facebook group, or in some cases an upside, but is the how open it is and how accessible it is. So for a Sunday morning service, most people would probably want that to be more open and more accessible than on a closed group. But for something like what you're talking about, that's absolutely fine. That works really, really well. Mm-hmm. It is worth just having a think about platforms generally and what platforms you're using. So, I mean, with the exception of your group that you were just talking about there, was everybody else was YouTube? Was that right? Everybody else was on YouTube? Yeah. Sorry, no, Pete's not. Where are you, Pete? What are you doing?
We're just Zooming.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I do remember. Yeah. Okay. Again, just depending on what it is you're trying to achieve with what you're trying to do. So if you want to have something where you can reach new people and do outreach and kind of connect with more people, then something nice and public and open like YouTube works really, really well. However, you may be aware of some of the issues that have been going on with regards to kind of licensing and people's content being blocked and taken off and audio taken out and things. Has anybody kind of come across these kind of issues?
Yeah.
So
on
there
Facebook general, not on my group. Yeah. If you've got a telly in the background playing a certain song.
Yeah, that's it. And even just singing the worship songs and things, they can have some issues. I think Facebook seems to just mute audio. So if you're singing worship songs and you put a worship video up on YouTube, on Facebook, Facebook seems to just mute the audio on that. YouTube can actually take the whole channel off. You can either have not have access to your video, or not have access to your whole channel can go down. And it's all very difficult. You can normally bring those things back again. Again, we can kind of just touch on licensing in a minute as well. So if you've got the licenses and things in place, you can then contact them and say, we've got the licenses, here they are, and they'll reinstate you and put you back on again. But that kind of is almost too late by the time that's happened. There is another platform that again is worth just being aware of, which I think Alive have been using actually, the online church platform. Is it called, Steph? Do you know what the platform is that you're using? I'm pretty sure I was talking with Ben. I'm pretty sure it's called Online Church Platform, and it's designed and built by Life Church in America, who are the same church who built the YouVersion Bible app. So they did all that kind of stuff. They're a really great resource to go and have a look at what they're doing, because they've developed all sorts of technical things for churches and church online, and they're just making them available for free for churches. So they've created a whole church online platform which churches can go and use for their services, and it's just designed from the ground up for churches, for church services, free to use. They've just built this platform and just make it available to everybody, so you can go and just put your videos straight on there. And it seems to work really well. It's got a lot of a lot of features, it can do a lot of things, but one of the really big benefits of it is they're much more lenient with regards to songs and copyright content and things. So they're not just going to take you offline just because you're singing a worship song. They know that churches, there are licenses that exist, and as long as you've got the licenses, you can kind of put your licensing information into there, and they're not just going to kill your audio just because you've put a worship song into your service. So again, it might be worth looking at that one as well. There's another alternative for people if you want to have, and that again can just be a nice open platform. You can then link that through to your own website, so you can just direct people to your website, put your services on there, and have everybody kind of go to somewhere nice and public like that to view your services. So that's another option for that. Was that a question, Pete? I saw your lips move. No, okay, fine. Licensing then. Does everybody know about the licensing? Has everybody kind of bought themselves online licenses and stuff? Some nods. Okay, so there is an online license that's been created. It's actually been a relatively recent thing that's only just been created, I think pretty much in response to the lockdown situation and suddenly all churches going online. They've now made an online streaming license that you can go and purchase. It's not very expensive. I think off the top of my head, I don't know if anybody knows the prices. I think it's about 25 quid, something like that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it is. Right.
Yeah, so not a big expense, and you can go and get that. You need that on top of all your other licenses that you would have had as well. As I understand it, I'm not entirely expert on this, but as I understand it, what it allows you to do is to put song lyrics on top of your music videos. So when you create your worship videos, you can then put the lyrics along the bottom, and you can put all of that up onto the internet, I think is what it's basically allowing you to do, which doesn't get covered by any of the other licenses that people have had. So make sure you've got that. If you're doing online worship stuff, you need to go and buy that license, and as I say, that's on top of all the other licenses that you would have needed. It is actually slightly different for Zoom if you're doing worship via Zoom. So the things that aren't covered with that license are playing other people's pre-recorded videos without their permission. So you can't just go and get a YouTube video and share it on your channel, or share it on Zoom, or share it on Facebook or anything. If you want to use a YouTube video as part of a sermon illustration and put that out on your video, you need to have permission by the person who made that original video in order to use that. There's no license that covers you for doing that. So you need to make sure you're going and finding those those permissions if you need that. Ground Level have got a bunch of videos. There's a load of stuff, worship music and sermons, and what else is on there, Steph? All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, there's a few children's animations on there, and a few communion videos and different things like that that we've all been given access to because churches have said, here you go, you can have this. So if you wanted to download any of them off the website, you can do, and that is your permission done for you.
Yeah, so you can go and grab any of that stuff and make use of any of that. But if it's anything else, anything that's just on YouTube or whatever, you'll need to go and find your own permissions to use those. With Zoom, to do your worship via Zoom, you also need a PRS license, I believe, as well. So you need to just make sure you've got all of that licensing. It's slightly different for Zoom. YouTube and Facebook actually have their own licensing that covers you for some things, but it isn't covered on Zoom. So you just need to make sure you are covered with all the relevant licensing for doing what it is you're trying to do.
We have that license anyway, I think, just for physically meeting. I think that's
okay. Fine.
Does that license, because I'm a Live Church Lincoln and the Facebook group is known by my pastor, but it's a closed group with just people that want to come on. I invite people that are in the group who come to the mental health support, or it's people that know of the group and I know them because it's people that normally come through the church. Would that license cover me? And I know YouTube, I can share videos and things, so I share to the closed group. Is that okay?
Yeah, so I think it would probably be slightly different because I think by the sounds of it, it's not a kind of an official alive group, is it? It's more of
No,
your own
no,
group. Yeah.
no.
So I would say that that probably is a different situation because
Right.
that's it's more of like a personal group with.
Well,
You
it
know,
is the group that we advertise at church, the
right.
Renew group. So it does come under the banner of the pastoral side of church.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't really know. I mean, it might be best to give, like, if you give CCLI a ring, they're really
Sorry,
helpful on the phone.
who?
CCLI.
CCLI. What does that stand for?
I don't actually know.
That's okay then.
It's
If I
something
Google
about, I'm guessing the
CCLI,
L is
they'll tell me.
license, something Christian
Okay.
license, something. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I work with acronyms at work, so I know not everybody knows my acronyms from NHS and social care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just Google CCLI. They'll come up as the kind of licensing group. Just give them a ring, and they'll be able to talk you through the specifics of
Brilliant.
that situation. But it's
Brilliant.
I think it's fairly unique, that one. So it would be worth just having a chat with them about that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else then?
No, well, great. If anybody does have any questions, obviously, you can contact Ben via his email. If anybody wants any of those documents that you spoke about right at the beginning, just send us an email, and Ben, I can get them off Ben, and I can email them to you. You can just email steph@groundlevel.org.uk. But other than that, thank you, Ben. Thank you for your time and for your wisdom. And yeah, we'll just give you a little Zoom round of applause. But yeah, it was brilliant. And guys, thank you for joining us. If you need to catch up on any of this, it will be on YouTube by the end of the week. And have a lovely day and a lovely week. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.